Hello, and welcome to another episode of Purlfect Pairings. My name is Gayann. My pronouns are she and her.
And my name is Laura, and my pronouns are she and her.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before we start, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're recording, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Thank you for tuning in, both previous viewers of the podcast, and if you're new, welcome. We have a really exciting chat today. I am here with Laura, who you may recognize as the proprietress of Owl of Athena Fibre Arts. Hi, Laura.
Hi, nice to be here.
You too. You too. I'm so excited for our chat today.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Shall we kick in?
kick
Let's just talk about what we're wearing,
Okay.
right? I've worn this before on
It's
the
a beautiful
show.
colour.
Thank you. It's the vest pattern is by Jamie Creates. It's the Stairway to Heaven vest, and it's in
Lovely.
her upcoming book, which is coming out in April.
Very exciting for her. Yeah.
April, I think in the United States maybe, and then
Okay.
May it'll be available in Australia.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting for her. And it's a Woolen Works merino.
I did wonder, I saw the pink and I
Single.
thought that looks like a Chloe pink.
It is a Chloe pink, called San Fran Flowers.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing my newly finished Lento jumper, and that's out of some of my yarn in the colourway Elixer, and I've held together a 4-ply and a Surrey silk lace weight. So
It's an absolute
it's
gorgeous
nice and
blue.
fluffy. Thank you. It's a bit my favourite from that collection. It's my favourite.
Okay, so I think we're all super excited to kind of know and learn about how you got started.
Well, it was a sort of combination of factors, really. I think really I started spinning, and there are a bunch of amazing hand dyers who dye fibre, people like Jen from Nest Fibre, or Adrian from Hello Yarn, or David from Southern Cross Fibre, whose stuff I just loved. And I sort of thought, oh, well, can't be that hard. Let's give it a go. And I'm not up to anywhere near their standards, but it was really fun to get some fibre and get some dyes and have a play with that. And somewhere along the way, I bought some undyed yarn as well and started doing some yarn. And
Was this just for your own personal use?
initially, yeah, and I started selling a little bit of it online, just as a sort of part-time gig, and then really enjoyed doing that and thought I want to do more of this. And as sort of time's gone on and circumstances change, dyeing fiber's not the most friendly to working around a family lifestyle. It's quite intensive, takes up a lot of space, and it's a lot less forgiving than dyeing yarn is. So I don't really dye fibre anymore. I'd like to get back to it one day, but for the moment, some of the things you can do with yarn are really different to what you can do with fibre, and so that it gives you a lot more agency to play with colour combinations. And obviously when you're working with fibre, there's a whole extra level of transition between what you dye and how it looks as yarn. So yeah, it's just a different sort of process.
That's super interesting. How long have you been, when did you start spinning?
I probably started spinning, I feel like I want to say maybe 2013, something like that. Yeah. And I think I'd sort of got into knitting. I somehow wandered into spinning. I had a drop spindle kit that I bought. And you know, one of those purchases that you're waiting for it to arrive and you've got this like buzz of like, I need to have it in my hands. Like it needs to get here now. And when it got here, the buzz didn't go away. And it's spindle spinning. I don't spindle spin much anymore, but again, I feel like it's sort of got its own magic of the tactile sense, and the sort of coordination is different to on a spinning wheel. But again, the extra steps that you have with spindle spinning, it takes a lot longer than it does to spin on a wheel.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I got into spindle spinning and got a bit obsessed with that. And my mum used to spin in the 70s. And so after I'd been spindle spinning for a while, and I think just talking about it way too much, she went, oh, you know, in the back room, there's a spinning wheel. And I went, is there? And so I ran, I got the spinning wheel out, had to play with that, and it was a complete disaster to start with. Like, I called her and I was like, I don't like it, it's no good. And she just said to me, look, you just have to be in control of the spinning wheel. I went, okay.
Take control.
Yeah. Which is true.
Right.
Yeah, I got to grips with that, and it was a little double drive wheel with not very good ratios between the wheel and the whirl on the top.
Okay, I think we'll have to go back. What's double drive? Is that with the two?
No, so double drive is actually, it's a method of tensioning a spinning wheel, and not to get into too much detail, but it basically means you have two drive bands. Well, you have a doubled over drive band, and the tension that you put on that drive band affects the take up of the yarn, which is how quickly it's pulled onto the bobbin. So you can adjust it, and a lot of people spin on double drive and have no trouble with it whatsoever. But more the problem with this wheel was the ratio size, because the difference between your drive wheel, which is the big wheel on a spinning wheel,
yes,
and your whirl, which is the small wheel up near the bobbin, affects how quickly you can put twist into the yarn. And so this one didn't have a very big ratio, and so you had to pedal a lot. So I'm little feet going like this, trying to get some twist into this yarn. And so I quickly went from there to sort of like Gumtree and bought myself an Ashford wheel.
I was just gonna say, did you take control of the wheel or take control of the issue itself?
Well, all of the above. It was a beautiful little wheel, and it was a really nice one to learn on. And it's one of those things that it's something that's been made by a craftsperson. It's been made in Australia, and it had a real history, so it was really special from that point of view.
Yep.
But it's certainly good to have something like an Ashford where you can get more bobbins, and you can get accessories, and you can replace parts easily.
Yep.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I feel also like spindling, like spinning on a hand, like on a spindle, is like a gateway.
It is good because it's very low entry. Like, you know, that you can get you can get very expensive drop spindles, but you can also get very basic, cheap drop spindle to have a go on, to see if it's something that you like. And it can really take you whichever way you want to go from there. It's a great way to try it.
Can you ply?
You can.
On a drop spindle?
Yeah. So what you do is you spin all your singles and then you wind them off. Some people will wind them into a ball, some people will wind them onto some sort of bobbin. A lot of people even just wind them onto something like a tennis ball, so you have like something to wind around to get started. And then you'd make 2 of those or 3 of those, whatever you want, attach them all to the spindle again, and just like with a wheel, you spin them back in the opposite direction to ply them, and it's just the same process. Oh, I see ideas forming.
I have this like real urge to try and spin, but I just don't know that I can add another level of hobby.
I'll give you a little crash course afterwards.
No. Oh boy. Oh, here we go.
You'll love it.
I reckon I will. And this is why I'm so hesitant.
I know.
Anyway.
I know. I have a friend who weaves who's like, oh, you should do that. And I'm like, oh, I can't take up another craft that adds more steps to the process.
I actually have a spot in my house that would be perfect for a loom, like a full-on loom. And I just can't actually bring myself to have the conversation with my husband about bringing this into our lives. Anyway, maybe. I
mean, you've got to leave yourself some like creative horizons, don't you? Don't never say never.
So off you go on business.
Yep.
And we love your yarn.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll show one of my whips in a little bit. But have you had any hiccups along the way, and how have you kind of moved through them?
Well, I guess, I mean, the short answer is yes. I sort of really got into all of this, and not that long after getting started, had a baby, and that can put a bit of a hiccup into a one-woman enterprise. So I had some time off then to obviously be with him, and sort of that all sort of flowed through into like toddler years and COVID. And so I actually didn't really have the business up and running for quite a few years in the middle of all that. And that was just, you know, I think a lot of people, when you're running a small business, if you don't do it, it doesn't happen.
Yep.
And if you have to be two places, then sometimes you just have to make that decision about what's best for the unit at that time.
Yep.
And it's been really nice now that he's a little bit older to get back into things. I suppose the other challenge is just of space. So for a while there, I just didn't have a space to dye in. And especially with a small child around, you don't want them getting into stuff and covering themselves with dye or anything like that. So I was offered some space for a little while, sort of when he was probably 2 or so. So I had a space away from home for a while there where I was able to work. And then eventually we moved, and I was able to have space again, and it's really amazing to have that creative outlet and have that drive to have those projects of your own that sort of fill your cup and drive you forward. And I think with something like this, there's always new ideas, and you talk to people, and especially at markets and things, people bring things that they've made with my yarn, and it's things that I wouldn't have thought of because it's somebody else's creative sense, and it inspires me to do other things, and I see patterns and I see ways people have used yarn, and I think, oh, that's great. And then my brain goes, oh, but you could do this colour and you could do that colour. And then it would be like that, but completely different again. And I'd really love how it all sort of grows on top of itself, and there's just always new things.
Yep. No, I completely agree with that. How do you decide what colors? Like, I don't know, there's so many like trends and Pantone color of the year. Like, how do you actually kind of keep up with that? Keep up with those trends, or do you just kind of go with what you like, or how do you do that?
It's probably a little bit of a mixture. I think when you're working in a creative area, you can't help but be inspired by what other people are doing. But at the same time, I don't really feel like I can get behind something unless I feel it myself. So I don't see any point in dyeing something that I don't like or isn't my style, because I mean, I'm curating what I sell, and if people like what I'm selling, then that's because they like that style. So I feel like to an extent it's driven by feedback that I get from customers, or just seeing what sort of things are selling. But a lot of the time I think I go on a bit of a creative jaunt in a certain direction, and I just follow it through. Like I think maybe a couple of years ago I went around the market at Merribek.
Oh yeah.
And I wasn't able to sell that year, but I thought, I'm going to shop, I'm going to see what everybody's selling. And I went round and I saw just everybody's stuff, and it's so inspiring to see what other people make. But I was looking at some really beautiful greens that some people had dyed, and I suddenly realized I had like no greens, just none. And I thought to myself, oh, I can't do green. It's not my thing. I'm not a green person. I don't get drawn to it naturally. And I went home and I thought, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to dye green.
Okay.
And so I went and I did some experiments. And then like 12 greens later, I was like, you have to stop. This is too much. Because again, one idea led on to another idea. And there were things like I had a purple colorway that I really loved the tonal variation in. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if I kept like the recipe, basically the same technique, the same quantities, the same, but I swap out the colors. and I swap out for blues and greens and yellows and see, what do I get? Do I get a yarn that looks the same but in a different colour? Do I get something that looks completely different? And it's just a sort of bunch of what ifs like that.
Was it completely different?
It went both ways, to be honest. I ended up doing a couple of different variations, and because it was a colour that had sort of sort of primaries as the base, but then a lot of tonal colour added to it with greys and browns. I had one green that was really green and kept that tonal variation that I really liked, and another one that really meandered off more into a almost variegated colorway that had a lot of different undertones in it. So it was it was really fun, and I really loved them both. Like they were different, but it was just fun to see where does this go. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go off script a little bit.
That's all right.
A little bit, and ask, when you are playing with color like that, have you ever had a time where you're just like, oh my God, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever created in my life?
Yes. Many times. And I think most dyers will. You can't try things out knowing that they're going to work. You can be fairly confident a lot of the time. But I do remember I had one yarn that I was working on, and I do love to just go and play, and sometimes I have to just assign myself some time to just go and play, because that's how you come up with new things and you get new inspiration.
Like a little free form kind of work.
Or even just a lot of the time I'll have leftover dye stocks or like colours that I've mixed for speckling and things like that that they're not going to keep, and so I'm like, I need to use them up, and so I just make random things, and I can add other stuff to it to see what works, but that's often inspiration for other colorways that come out later. But I did have this yarn once that I was sort of working on a golden yellow colour, and I thought, I want this to have like a little bit more depth to it. Let's layer a bit of brown over it. And it just looked like old bananas.
Oh, God.
It was awful. And I thought, oh, what have I done? What have I done? And it's just, when you're on that creative high and suddenly it all goes wrong, you're just like, oh, no. But it turned out all right in the end. I thought, well, like, it's as close to ruined as makes no difference, so might as well chuck some other colours on there. I ended up putting some blue over it and got this really interesting sort of swampy green, which I know doesn't sound appealing. But swampy green has its place.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes that's what we need. And it was, you know, I had a few skeins of that that I took to a market and I sold, and people were like, oh, I love this. This is great.
So if you have verdant swamp.
Yeah. Used to be yucky banana. So yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking of a fancy color name.
Yeah.
That's not a real color name.
No.
Sorry, we'll get back to get back to your regularly scheduled programming here. Is there any particular place or maybe not necessarily place, but your inspiration for colors, aside from you know, looking at trends and stuff, where does that come from?
I think sometimes it will come from things that I want to make myself. I will just have a vision of a certain item in a certain colour, and I'll think, oh, let's see if I can make that colour. I used to, when I was first starting out doing this, I worked part-time in an office and part-time doing dyeing, and prior to that I'd been in the office full-time for a long time, and I wasn't really happy there. But we had this amazing view out over the bay because we were up quite high in St Kilda, and there was this one patch of ocean, and I used to just sometimes stare out the window at this like one patch of ocean, and I was like, that colour, I need to make that colour. And so that was one of the very early, I have a lot of blues as well, but that was one of the very early blues that has sort of a special place, because it was like that little bright spark of having that view to look at when, you know, offices can be a little bit soul-sucking sometimes. And so there's things like that. Sometimes I think have visions of sort of a set of colours together, and I'll just build off one colour and sort of work outwards from there. Sometimes, I think there's a lot of what if dyeing, of like, well, what happens if I do this? Like, Sea Maid's Song is a really interesting colourway because it's got a lot of layers of colour in it, but it actually, I don't know if you've heard the term, I don't know if this comes up in knitting so much as in spinning circles, but sometimes people will describe yarn as clown bath.
No, I've actually never heard yarn described as clown bar.
Yeah, so I think maybe it's a spinning thing. So sometimes if you are making a really bright and colourful yarn and you decide to ply it together so you will get alternating colours in your plies and have a mild yarn, if you've got a lot of bright colours, it can come out just looking like a big mess because you've blended the colours too much. It's too confusing to the eye. And yeah, it's described as clown buff.
Okay.
And so that colourway, when you first start it, it's a variegated yarn. It's got bright blue, red, yellow, sort of magenta-y pink. It looks really ugly for the first maybe 4 or 5 layers of colour. And then it's glazed in a sort of ocean blue.
Ooh.
And it suddenly just brings it all together. And that was a what if. That was a what if I chuck all these colours on that don't really go together and don't really look that great and then glaze it. What happens? And so I feel like a lot of the inspiration comes from those sort of ideas of going, well, let's see.
And we were talking before we started recording, that's one of the most popular colours that you've made almost ever.
Yep. It tends to sell out. It tends to sell out really quickly. And I think it's the colourway that a lot of people will come up to me at markets and they say, oh, I've got some of this, and so it grabs people.
Let's talk yarn bases. How do you pick your bases?
Again, in terms of what I carry, I feel like it's really important that they're things that I like and that I think are good to work with, because I don't feel comfortable about selling something that I don't really think is a great product. So at the moment I carry a lot of sock yarn and arguably possibly too much.
Is that even a thing? Can you possibly have too much sock yarn?
It depends who you ask, I think. But I think it's versatile, and I think it allows people to, you don't have to only make socks with it. And so I have a bunch of different sock yarns, and I even have 2 yarns that are exactly the same sort of fibre makeup, but spun in completely different styles and result in completely different yarns. And so sometimes I feel people go, what's the difference between this and this? And I'm like, well, on one level, nothing. And on the other level, everything. So again, I like to have some things that are good all-rounders, good quality. I feel like the drape and look of the fabric is important. And then I like to have a few things also that are a little bit unusual. So I carry a bronze sparkle sock yarn, which I like because it's not really blingy, but it's something a little bit different. It's a little bit fun. I feel like it works really nicely with darker colours. And it's not something that a heap of people carry. So I like to have something that's a bit different. And the last couple of years I've been branching out with some DK bases and the Surrey alpaca and silk,
which I love.
It's really fun. And so again, I'm sort of, I watched for a long time, there was that big craze for sort of fluffy sweaters for a while there. And a lot of it was with mohair, and I'm not able to wear mohair or work with it. And so for a long time I thought, oh, I can't have a fluffy sweater.
It's a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it is. And then I found, the Surrey silk as an alternative, and I thought, oh, I can do this now. So
Case in point.
Case in point. So that's been really exciting. And again, it's been, because a lot of the yarns I work with are superwash, dyeing something non-superwash and also dyeing something with a completely different texture has been really interesting, quite challenging on some levels, because I find that the colour the colour always comes out a lot paler on the suri silk.
Interesting.
And a lot of the time, even if I'm trying to match the depth of colour, I need to like double the dye quantities. Which for some of the darker colours like this is a lot of dye. And I'm not entirely sure what it is. I think maybe it's something to do with surface area. That's my working theory.
Ah, yes. Yes, because it's a bit fluffier.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you looked at it under a magnifying glass, it would, or a microscope,
Yeah.
it probably would have. Sorry, this is my science
brain coming out.
Sure,
I think that appeals to a lot of people though, because I feel like there's quite a bit of crossover.
Definitely. What techniques do you do? You talked about glazing. When you dye, like what's your kind of process?
I do a lot of glazing. I do, I guess, what you call kettle dye or kettle pot dyeing, which is I use saucepans rather than those big square pans that you might see a lot of dyers working with.
Yep.
I'd actually love to have a try in the big square pans. But one of the things that is important to me is that when I do dye variegated yarns, I don't like a lot of pooling. That's just personal preference, and not everybody feels that way. And some people do amazing things with pooling yarns.
Yeah, especially the assigned pooling, right? That's
you can do some really fun stuff. But especially if I'm dyeing for socks or something like that, you know, I don't want to end up with a big stripe running down the sock, or one side's all red and the other side's all blue, or anything like that. Excuse me. So I feel that for producing variegated yarns that don't do that, kettle dyeing is really good. So I move the skeins around a lot. I layer colour a lot. I really love speckling. It's time intensive, but I really love the look of it. And it's fun. Again, until you try out some different things, I think you don't really realise how many different options there are in how you speckle. Yeah. So sometimes I speckle with a paintbrush. Sometimes I'm mixing citric acid with the dye to produce a different type of speckle. A lot of my colours, because of the way they're layered, I'm actually able to add the dye directly onto the top of the water. And so again, you can get a really different effect if you pre-mix the dye powder with water and pour it over, versus if you just sprinkle it onto the top of the yarn.
Like you're seasoning something, right?
Yeah. And again, you get different effects as to whether you move it immediately after that or you leave it for a few minutes. Or often I like to sort of twist the yarn up into sort of like cinnamon bun style balls, and then pop it into a dye bath and glaze it like that, so that you get a bit of like resistance on some parts of the yarn.
But not on the parts that are kind of touching, like the inner bun bits.
Yeah, but the inner bun bits don't get as much exposure. The outer bits will get more exposure, and I'll often do that and maybe leave it for a few minutes and then open them up. And so you get a lot of different depths of tone on the different parts of the yarn. So
that is fascinating. I think.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I've done a class, like a workshop before in some techniques, and I just feel like that just, the more I learn about it and have conversations like this, the more I realize that was just a scratch of the surface. And there's just so much knowledge, so many techniques. Yeah. And it's
so individual. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people too will actually like twist a skein up into a sort of hank and submerge it that way. Yes. And I've seen even some techniques where you can inject dye into a ball. So you can, like, I haven't tried that. I feel like
with a syringe kind of thing.
So you would actually use like a ball winder, wind it into a ball, pre-soak it, and then sort of inject yarn inside the ball.
Like, sorry about the crinkling. So literally you would take something like that, and then just go
Yeah. I know. I think in my mind it's a bit too random. I'm sort of like, oh, I wouldn't have much control over that.
There's another what if. Seriously, what if? Like,
what if? Yeah.
Interesting.
And I do. Sometimes I develop colorways and then I don't dye them for a while again. I come back to them and I read my notes. And I'm like, what was I there's so many steps. This is insane. So I think sometimes when you're on that path to like, it's a one-off creation process, you don't mind how laborious it is. But when you come back to it later on thinking, well, I've got to do 10 of these or I've got to do 20 of these, you're like, oh no.
Why didn't I pick something simpler?
Past Laura. And again, I have to admit with C-Made Song, it's 11 layers of colour. And it's not like none of the steps are very fiddly, but it takes a good long time to dye that colourway. And so often before I mark it, I think, oh, I must do some C-Made Song. And a lot of the time it comes down to, well, how many times can I make myself do the process?
Yeah.
So,
and especially if you're doing like small batches, you don't have like a scaled operation.
Yeah.
Can be very time consuming.
Yeah.
Now back to your spinning. You clearly love spinning.
I do.
But you also knit. Do you crochet too?
I do crochet a bit. It's sort of my like off subject craft, I guess. I tend to crochet when I'm very stressed, or when I'm very bored, I think. And I just find it's a bit of a like palette cleanser from knitting. Yeah. And I'm not as good at it. And so every time I crochet something, I have to go back on YouTube and Google everything again. Because I've got that sort of like muscle memory of various, but I don't remember what they're called. And so I read the pattern and I think, oh, I'm doing a double crochet. Which one is that? And I have to go look it up and try again. But I do find once I get into the rhythm of it, I really enjoy, I think the speed of it is quite satisfying.
Yes.
But yeah, it does tend to be my like alternate craft.
Can I ask you to pick a favorite child? Which, between spinning, knitting, and crochet, what's your favorite?
I think I'd have to say knitting. The portability is a big factor.
Yeah.
And just the adaptability. I have to say though, spinning is so relaxing. Like there's something different about spinning to knitting that you get into that real flow state where
just everything else falls away.
Everything else sort of stops, but it's sort of it's like you get pulled into the next step. Knitting is easy to put down. I feel like when I'm spinning, I have to be like, now it's time to stop. You have to stop now.
You are not the first person who has said that to me.
Oh, really?
Yes. This is another thing why I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Absolutely intrigued.
It's very tactile. And it's funny too because I actually took my spinning wheel into my son's kinder a few years ago to give the kids a demonstration of spinning because his kinder teacher had been doing this process to sort of show the children how natural things progress into sort of crafted items, I guess. And the idea that like a lot of kids don't necessarily know where things come from.
Exactly.
And she had like raw locks on a table and she had some spun wool on the table and all of the children received little knitted dolls of themselves. It was amazing. It was really, really sweet.
Forever.
Yeah, and it wasn't even the kinder teacher who made them. It was her friend got like drafted in to make all these little woolen dolls.
What a good friend.
I know, but she found out that I was a spinner and she was like, can you come in, please? Can you come in? I said, yeah, sure. And I took the spinning wheel in and the kids are just fascinated with it. And the good thing about a spinning wheel, like obviously the spinning process is a little tricky for them, but you can have all the stuff there and they can have a feel of it. And even when you show somebody how, if you just pull on fibre, it will just come apart.
Yeah.
Versus if you add that twist and pull again and you can't get it apart.
Yeah.
And they think it's a magic trick. And then there's a machine that they can play with and they're so happy. And so I ended up with this queue of like 10 or 12 of the kids waiting to have a go treadling the spinning wheel. Aww. And they just sit down on it and I took the drive band was on, but I took the wool off so they could just treadle, or I might have had like a really long leader and they could just wind the leader on. I had some kids who would have a go, and I'd say, okay, next person now, so hop up. They get up and they go around, they join the end of the line again.
Oh, they really liked it.
They loved it. And I've had the same experience with nieces and nephews too, who just, that it's like a fascinating thing that does something that they don't quite understand. But I feel like when you're making yarn too, the process is really, really tactile. And it's, I mean, knitting is tactile too, but spinning is sort of, you've got these sort of forces that are there to control, and you've got to keep them sort of balanced. It's really interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know, sorry.
It's too late, I can tell. You've got the itchy fingers.
I'm looking at, there happens to be a spinning wheel in the corner of the room over here that I'm just like, oh, that's beautiful fiber. Love that color. Anyway, speaking of fiber and color, let's show us some yarn.
Okay, I pulled out a couple of things to share. I thought, since we talked about a lot, this is Sea Maid's song. So again, I don't know if you can see the colours in there. But I do find too, it's one of those ones where, partially because of kettle dyeing, partially because of the process, the skeins can end up, you can still work with them together, but each one feels a little different. And often when I'm skeining them, I think, oh, I'm going to keep that one. That one's for me. And then I do the next one and I go, this one's for me. So I don't keep them.
I think it's an
I've learned my lesson. I know.
Occupational hazard of being a yarn dyer, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a bit of a favorite for me. And it's really nice how it works out, because the colors change really quickly. You get a lot of variation between stitches as you're working, and it doesn't tend to pull. So you might get some little areas, but you're not going to get great big splodges. So I grabbed that. I also grabbed, I've just started a colour club, which is sort of colour of the month, and I'm offering it as, it's just something that you can order during the month, so you don't have to sign up, because I've been in sort of mystery clubs in the past, and when you get something that's not really your thing, it can be a bit disappointing. So I like to give people the chance to see it first and see if it's something that they like. So this is March's colourway.
That's stunning too. I love duck egg blue.
So it's got lots of sort of bronzes and blues, and this is actually the sparkle base as well.
Is it?
It is.
That's very subtle.
It's very subtle. Yeah.
But yes, I can see it now. That
and it actually, I think it shows up slightly more once you've knit the fabric, and because of you can move the fabric, you get that little bit of shine to it. I really like it. I feel like it's...
I have thought about making a sparkly lento.
Oh, that would be so fun.
Right? Because it uses 4-ply and then a fluff, right?
Yeah. That would be great.
It's just a bit dressier and make it a bit with a bit less positive ease.
Yep.
Like just kind of minimal positive ease, a bit more fitted.
Yeah.
But I still love that shape.
Yeah. Actually, I had a customer who special ordered some of this yarn from me I've got a colorway that's a very, very dark grey, almost a black. And I'm trying to think what it's called. I feel like it's maybe called Mount Plenty or something like that. It's a little sort of cropped sweater with like lace around the bottom of it. And she made it in this dark grey with the bronze sparkles. And she wore it to a market to show me, and it was just stunning, absolutely beautiful.
That's giving me too many ideas. This yarn has a beautiful twist in it as well.
It does, yeah. So this yarn it's a 4-ply weight, but the actual spinning structure is only a 2-ply. And that's what gives you that sort of little pearly sort of bump look on the yarn.
I love that, and I think that makes it really good for like textured stitches as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, what else? There's more.
I brought out these 3 just because I've got a series at the moment called River Wild, which is a set of colours that will work together, all together, or in sort of trios or pairs of colours. This one is actually the colour I'm wearing.
I love that.
So that's Elixer. And I've also brought Gentleman's Moss, which has been another favourite with a lot of people. And this one is called Contrast Blue. And it's funny, it's not a colour I would usually be drawn to, but the more I work with it, the more I really, really love it. And I think I've got this vision of like a colourwork yoke with this and like a very pale grey and a brown. And I just think it would be magic. Ooh. So I brought those along. These are all available dyed to order at the moment on my website. And I've also got just a little sample here of the full range of the colours. I'll bring that up so you can see. So yeah, there's a lot of things here that you can pair up. Oh, I'm gonna lose that. Or work with as a fade, or yeah, 2s and 3s that can sort of go together. So yeah, I thought that was fun just to have a little look at.
They're stunning.
Thank you.
I love those. Sorry, I'm just keep looking at it. Oh, well, I love that. Do you have any other than Lento? Have you made anything else recently?
I have just finished this pair of socks, which are in one of the colours from River Wild. This is Wolf Lichen, and it's been a really popular colourway at markets. And this pattern is, I've forgotten the name. Hibernal by Summer Lee Knits. And I love this pattern. I finished these ones. I cast on another set like straight away because it's such a fun pattern to work.
I might just take a moment and show this because Laura has a copy of Summer Lee's sock project.
We've been ogling it.
Oh my gosh, it's
beautiful.
I'm speechless actually about it, and you cannot open this book without let's find a really colorful page because it's just, the dopamine.
And the photography is so beautiful
too.
Yeah.
And the color selections.
They're just joyful. They're just so joyful. Yeah.
Is Hibernal in this one, or is it?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, actually. Okay. I got it online, and I think it might have been before the book came out.
I'll put a link to the pattern in the description box. But this is now on my list. Be going home to hop on Booktopia or whatever to find that one. I think I'm gonna show you my project
to see
that I've been working on. This is the I know I've gone and forgotten my name as well.
Blank.
It's the Cecil Shawl by it's Joanna Harriet, I think, who is on Instagram as Twinset and Pearl.
Okay.
And I'm making this in some of Laura's
so beautiful
Surrey alpaca held with some Leesum wool.
Do you want me to take a side?
Yeah. Do you want to? I'll trust you with the needle size.
I can be trusted.
It's just
none of us can see what you can see. It goes on and on. It does. Absolutely lovely.
Getting quite long now. But
the drape on it is fantastic,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So the Leesum does feel like, we were talking earlier, in the ball it actually looks like quite thin, but it knits up with quite a bit of loft. So that the sections that are held with this Surrey silk get a beautiful density to them, especially the where you hold 2 strands of the Surrey silk together.
I love seeing the variation between the colors blending. So getting to see that section, and then what this section has got the brown and the pink blending. It's like,
and then there's a blue and pink section just here.
It's like that activity you can do with kids and overlay the cellophane sort of thing, but like in wool.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you still dyeing these colorways? Because when did I buy them? So. I got them at Bendigo last year.
Yeah. I think I know what this one and the brownies. I'm not sure which blue you've got.
I have the tag. I've got the tag.
You're organised.
Score. Water.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are all repeatable ones.
And a funny story. I'm knitting this at the same time as Daniela from A Knitter's Suitcase.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were at Bendigo together last year and bought the yarn, and we thought, we're going to do this project together. And I was so stressed out about what color and what colors I wanted to make.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to use the Lisa wool as the base, but I literally walked around the entirety of Bendigo and I was like, no, maybe, no. I got really close a couple times, and I had bought some surrey from you at the beginning of the day because I knew that that was a particular color that I wanted, and I went back and I looked at your stall again, and I was like, it was like the light just came on, and it was like,
that's a good feeling.
This is perfect. Blue, pink, tan, like all colors that I love. They did speak to me. And I thought they were going to be an incredible together. And I think, where's your little swatch? When you look at how you've done these colors, 100%. You could use any of these. Yeah. Like mix and match. Yeah. Like,
yeah. Because I was thinking about that too. It'll be really interesting to try with like a dark main yarn.
So,
and see how it would like.
Daniela's got a darker base. She's used a grey. Definitely go and stock Daniela. She's used a grey base with like a neon yellow,
that'd be fun.
And a blue, and a black.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
And it will be so interesting to see how the same pattern knits up differently in different colors. Like you were saying before, when you see somebody at a market that has something that you were like, oh, I've seen that pattern before, but I love it. Yeah. In those colors. It can be just so really inspiring. Fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's looking beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really enjoying it. I work on it every morning, actually.
That's nice.
I start the day with a bit of tea and knitting, and that way I've got... well, Daniela and I were like, well, let's try and spend 30 minutes a day on it. Yeah. Right? And then we'll kind of see
sort
how...
of keep pace.
Yeah.
It's good to have somebody working along with you on something like that too, because it does keep you motivated and moving forward.
Yeah, like a knitting accountability buddy. Yeah.
Like we need
any kind of excuse.
We need to be serious about our hobbies. We do.
And speaking of different patterns and things, do you have any favorite designers at the moment?
Well, I do really love Summer Lee. I have made a few of her patterns and I just have always had such a nice time. So I know I've got a lot of those queued up at the moment. I really love, I think it's called Tender Age, one of her patterns, and it's got sort of little lacy, almost like heart motifs around the top of the sock with bobbles. And so it's maybe, I don't know, a couple of inches of sort of focused work on the top of the sock and then just a vanilla sock for the rest of it. And that was another one I made 2 pairs back to back because I loved it. And I finished one, I think I did a bright sort of gold and yellow pair. And then I went, oh, and a blue, that'd be great in blue. So then I did a blue pair. So I've got a lot of her stuff queued. And I really love, I'm not sure if I'm going to say her name right, Trin Anelli. Her design aesthetic just speaks to me, and I've got a lot of her jumpers sort of in my maybe pile in my brain for what to make next, because I realized when I finished this, I haven't finished a adult garment for about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if that's a sort of post-pandemic brain block or if it's just where I'm at in life right now. I'm not sure. But having finished this, I'm feeling very inspired to
for garments.
Yeah, get on with another garment.
I think vests are really good for that too.
I might try for a vest actually, because I was thinking something sort of in between warmth-wise would be really useful.
Yep.
So yeah, those are a couple that I've got in mind at the moment. And the other person who I've just been on her Instagram a lot recently, and I think her Instagram is Vic Vera, but I think her name is Mia Demmer, and her colour is just so inspiring, and she's doing a lot of really bright multicolored socks at the moment, and I just love them. So I have to admit, there's been a lot of those where I think I could dye, you know, a bunch of minis and make a sample of these, and then I'm like, what would I put in? And I think making those color decisions is really what's appealing to me.
Yeah.
So those are the sort of things I've got in mind at the moment.
Well, I'm so happy that you're making those color decisions so that I don't have to, because clearly I am like the queen of indecision when it comes to color.
Well, but when you got to what you needed, you made the decision. You just have to see the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, those, I had not heard of Trinanely before, and I was like transfixed.
Her stuff's so
looking
beautiful.
at her Ravelry.
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, favorite.
Yeah. And I think too, like, she's got a lot of really like graceful jumpers, and then a lot of geometric socks, and those things really push my buttons. So I'm like, yes.
I know. I'm set, like, after this discussion and looking at this sock project book, I'm like, oh, that could be my afternoon, casting on some new socks.
Yeah. It's a good afternoon for it.
Laura, where can our viewers find you?
So you can find me on Instagram or Facebook as Owl of Athena Fibre Arts. And I've got a few markets confirmed for this year. There's a few more still in the works. So I'm going to be at the Handknitters Guild market in Coburg, at Merribek Town Hall, which I think is 1st and 2nd of June off the top of my head. It's a little bit later this year than usual. Yeah. So I think some people have trouble with it overlapping with Mother's Day. So I think they decided to push it a little bit later this year.
Yeah.
And I will be at Bendigo Sheep and Wool Show, which I think this year is 19th, 20th, 21st of July.
Yes.
And those are my confirmed markets for the moment. But if you're interested in seeing my stuff in person, just follow me online and I'll be sure to let people know if anything else comes up.
And your website, you can order as well.
Yes, you can. So yeah, it's owlofathenafiberarts.com. And I've got a lot of dye to order options there at the moment. If you've seen something that you really like that's not dye to order, send me an email, because often if I've got the time, I can just do quantities to order. So yeah.
Fantastic. Purlfect Pairings, I have to ask, what is your beverage of choice when you craft?
Cup of tea. Yeah. Black English breakfast for preference.
Oh, love it. Love it. It's my AM cuppa.
No, can't go past it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah. And if you have liked today's episode, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like more content like our friendly chats today, you can hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. Let us know what you love about Laura's work, or if you've been knitting anything out of Summer Lee's sock project, because I think we're just obsessed with that right now. Yeah, until next time, we're going to say happy knitting because you picked knitting. All right, until next time, happy knitting.
Happy knitting.